Alright, hello again to anyone watching these kaijudo videos. Today I'm here with the first video that will be covering my kaijudo tournament that I'm hosting through the Rangers Dojo Discord. And I have a special guest with me today, Andross, from the community as well. If you want to say
I,
hello.
yeah, it's more Andross than Andros, but
Andross, okay, sorry. It's maybe a little bit
we
of,
don't talk much, we just chat.
yeah,
It's fine.
yeah, maybe it's the Canadian accent. If
Ah,
that's a
yes,
thing.
yes,
I don't
that could
know if it's
be.
a thing. But yeah, we're just gonna go over all of the decks that people brought to the tournament and maybe give us or give a little bit of our own predictions on how things are gonna play out. And I guess we can jump right into the first deck here if you want. Two shots
Sounds
brought.
good.
Yeah, he brought another mono dark deck. Last tournament he also brought mono dark, but last time it was very rotworm focused. This time it is very scared horrible focused. I think he's got all of. Does he have every single one, or is he missing some?
He's missing a couple, but
Missing.
definitely a Scaradouble theme for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's got all the good ones, except for the the Vortex Evo, because that one's pretty good too.
Yeah, I guess yeah,
Uh,
that's Dark Nature.
can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Yeah,
But yeah, I mean he's got a lot of like the Chimera stuff, the Medusas, Gloom Hollows. I don't think. Oh yeah, he's missing Screeching, which is a little bit surprising. I would think that card might be just
yeah, that's a big one.
yeah, it's probably just better straight up as a 4 drop than the Bat Breast. But I mean he's got a lot of stuff. It's kind of like just like a mid-rangey deck, lots of shield triggers. He's got Mesmerize. He's got a Kalima for I guess the top end. But I don't know. There's not too much to say about this deck, I guess. Like, it's pretty clear Two Shots is sort of attached to his mono dark themes, and not to be too harsh, but I think there's only so far you can kind of get with that direction, regardless of
Yeah.
which way you take it. But
Well, I do like this deck a lot better than the last one he brought. Definitely some scary stuff it can do.
mm-hmm.
Uh, but I would basically more or less agree with your assessment there.
Yeah,
So,
the
but
Baelgor's
you know,
yeah, the Baelgor's kind of cool though as a one of, but
oh, sure,
yeah,
sure.
nice to see that card see some play. It's got some potential to be pretty strong, but especially if you're dark where your late game options aren't as strong as a light deck where you have Andromeda and Haven. But yeah, I guess we can move on to the next one if you want. Um,
Oh, I guess we should mention we actually already do have the result of
oh, true.
uh,
Yeah,
two shots, and I can't remember who he was playing
I
against.
think Darksteiner and him played. They already finished their first round,
Yes,
and Darksteiner did
yeah,
take the match 2-0. So Two Shots already one match down, but I mean he could still take the next two and finish reasonably well in the tournament. Just a 3 round event, of
yeah,
course. So the next
yeah.
list would be actually, I think your deck. You chose to bring, I guess, a very similar list to the one I won the previous event with, which is just Light, Water, Fire, Oath Dragons. Do you want to talk about how you, I guess, arrived at this deck and this list in particular?
I was definitely looking at a few different things. We had a conversation about the idea of instead of just taking as a given the certain decks were good in open format with
Mm-hmm.
that actually like trying to explore that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I tried to go back and look at some classic decks and, see if I still liked all the decisions they made in them and try to rebuild them
Mm-hmm.
with, some of the modern type of, or at least the deck building that's going on in our little community where you've got right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I definitely played around with some different ratios with different things. This is kind of what I settled on. Uh, was a little concerned about specifically some of the aggro stuff people were testing out, and so I tried to lean into the that side of anti-aggro a little bit more than maybe I normally would have.
For
Um,
sure.
and but yeah, I feel like most everything in here is pretty much stuff that people would normally play for this sort of deck.
Yeah, just some of
I
the
mean, the
numbers.
Osworns and the Corisles are probably the most exotic cards on here, you know.
Yeah, that's like similar to what I was exploring when I played the deck in the first event. And Coral was definitely a card that kind of it definitely performed really well for a lot of the aggro matchups that I played. And having two felt pretty nice, especially if you expected more aggro decks. And then I think the changes from your list to mine, I think we're cutting a Jump Jets and a Keeper of Laws for Coral Strider, I think, and then you cut Twin Cannon Maelstrom for, I believe, one extra Big Dragon. Off the top of my head, that looks like the main stuff. And then, of
Uh,
course,
I have a
Arbiter.
third Kaio in here too. I don't. Oh, and I think you were running
Oh, yeah,
Storm
yeah, yeah.
Spark and I'm running Arbiter.
Yeah, Stormspark
Yeah.
and Arbiter was like one swap. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think there must have been two dragons or something that I was playing, and you added Kyo and either Second Awakened, I think. Yeah, I forget exactly, but some
Yeah.
minor changes in some of the stuff we were playing. But the Striders, like just the one of Strider, is there any? Was there what was going into that decision?
Originally, I had a different one of, I think I was running Heretic Prince Baraka
Mm-hmm.
as an extra big guy. I think in place of one of the Sky Crushers, actually. So, like, my dragon count was the same. But I kind of did want to have an extra, or, well, I didn't mind having an extra multi-civ, let me put it that way. And with, again, when I was worried about the aggro stuff, having another early drop made sense to me. Admittedly, I don't think I actually play tested the Strider much. It was kind of like one of the
Yeah.
last minute additions. So we'll see. It
Yeah.
it did fine in my limited play testing after I locked the deck in, but
Yeah. It's definitely a solid card to have. But yeah, I don't think you want more just because of the multi-civ count, unless you were to cut Oathsworn. I think I remember
yeah.
mentioning Strider as an option to you when we were playtesting. I think against like the evolution heavy decks, because I think Strider
Mhm.
does really help there. If you're expecting like a lot of the basically like the Anjac decks, mono nature. I was playing a lot of water nature and testing, and Strider can be really nice there because it just sort of buys dragons a ton of time. Just chump blocking an evolution creature, it can actually be pretty important. But
Just saying no, you can't attack me until you get that evolution, even, you know?
yeah, because
Um,
like the mono nature decks especially are like really, I mean they just don't have ways to get things off the board until Boulder Fist basically. So yeah, it just buys a ton of time, and then you can just land a Lyra, and then you can yeah, it's very nice in those matchups. But did you have anything else you wanted to mention about your list, or do you want to just move on to the next one?
I don't know. It feels like in a lot of respects, it's pretty well-worn territory at this point. I was hoping to have something new and exciting. I definitely looked at a few different things like
Hmm.
Krogon, but I was just like struggling to come up with scenarios where that was actually better than the
Yeah,
kind of the standard staple cards, you know?
yeah, I
I mean,
think
it's boring, but it works.
yeah, a lot of the tech dragons like they'll do work randomly. Like you'll just play them, they'll line up well, they'll give you profitable, I don't know, exchanges. I don't know what you want to call it. Like a lot of them, like Heretic Prince, Krogon, they're all powerful cards. It's just I don't think they're really doing things that are filling like specific needs, right? Like Lyra or Andromeda and Infernus are like really powerful cards that like actually do things that you need, right, in terms of stabilizing, whereas I don't know. A lot of the other ones are kind of just gravy cards, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, I did seriously consider instead of running the two Sky Crusher, one Unchained, uh, specifically because it actually cleared stuff like Finbar and Broodmother. But
True.
ultimately, I didn't make that decision.
Yeah, that was the move of one of my friends who used to play kaijudo. I think Unchained was his favorite card, so he just always had like a 1-1 split of Skycrusher and Unchained, regardless of how good it was. But yeah, we can move on to Darksigner's deck if you want. Um,
Sure.
he chose to bring basically another revamped version of the deck he brought last time, which is just light water. I guess I don't know if you want to call it prime aggro or basically just a more focused, like enforcer based light water aggro deck. Not playing three colors where you have more multi civs and sword horns. Just going for like a much leaner approach. Um, I think the main changes he made were putting in the third Blinder Beetle Prime, adding a second Sasha, And he also decided to go with Magris over Cyberscamp this tournament, which is maybe me
Yeah,
sabotaging him, but we'll see how that works
yeah.
out.
I liked this list better than his last one. I think it's more focused on the things the deck does well.
Yeah.
I don't was he running Cephalia last time? Because that seems like a really cool addition as
No,
well.
he had the Cephalias last time as well.
Oh,
I
okay.
he the big thing was that he was just lower on the evolutions, and I think he had more. I forget what he had exactly. Maybe more two drops. Maybe he had the third Storm Spark Blast. I can't remember off the
I
top of
think
my
he
head.
was running Cloudwalker drone in there too somewhere. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so he trimmed that to make some of the other stuff fit in.
for
But
sure. Oh yeah, I think he just had like a
oh,
play
was he
set of
running
extra.
Sasha before?
He had one. That was one of the things. Like
Oh,
he
okay.
just, from what I talked to him, he was definitely felt on board with the idea that you just like need a little bit more big stuff to close the game. So just seeing the Sasha more often is really important. So I think that's what he did. He just like cut a playset of two drops for more like kind of robust mid to late game cards. But otherwise, same list. Um, I did play like a number of sessions like playtesting with Darksigner, and he was originally he was like really set on wanting to play some kind of like corrupted wild veggie themed deck because I guess his background is like from coming from Duel Masters. He has like a really huge affinity for the survivor stuff. So in kaijudo, obviously that translates to the corrupted. And yeah, he we spent a fair amount of time like trying different builds, and he just couldn't justify. I think last minute we played like one more testing match, and he just like just dumped the deck off to the side and audibled back to the light water aggro deck. But I guess unfortunate, but
Yeah, corrupted's tricky. There's potential there, but yeah, it's hard to put all the pieces together.
yeah.
There's a lot of working parts you got to deal with.
I mean, yeah, the original idea is like veggies is better than corrupted, so go with that. But then veggies was kind of just not quite good enough, so maybe moving towards more of like the good stuff deck, which was a lot of what I was testing, which was just these like water nature based good stuff decks. And then I came to the conclusion that it's like not even worth running Bad Apple to begin with. And then yeah, Darksigner was kind of still on just like the water nature Bad Apple, except playing maybe just like a slight Swift Regeneration plus Blitz Commando package. So not really a corrupted deck, not really a veggie deck, just like a water nature aggro deck splashing for some late game power. But those decks just weren't really good enough to be confident bringing them to an event like this. But I guess that's enough to to say. I guess we could talk a bit about the Magris versus Cyberscamp. What do you think about what do you think about that change?
I think it makes sense if you are focusing a little more on the enforcer engine and everything. And um, if I don't know, it seems like I can see both sides of that one a little bit, especially if also the incorporating the more it feels like it makes more sense for like a intentionally faster deck, but you know you also have got the refill mechanics and
Mm-hmm.
the Sashas in there, which are kind of indicating a more longer game plan. So, I mean, it's still handy to have, certainly, but
Yeah,
yeah, that's a tough to make to like cut one of the stronger cards in the game for a one drop, which is
yeah,
literally the weakest card in the game by
yeah.
definition.
If it
Uh,
goes wrong, we can blame it on me because I
oh,
suggested
okay.
it, and then because I didn't feel like Scamp was going to be that well positioned in this event because a lot of the people
Well,
that
hey, I was on the hairbreadth of going with a pile deck, so you know that matchup
yeah,
he would have loved the Scamp, but I
but
ended up
yeah,
not going that direction.
yeah, I figured most of the controls that people brought, which kind of turned out to be the case, would be a lot of these like more mid-rangey creature focused builds. Like a deck like two shots, like he has mesmerize and some shield triggers, but I don't know. I agree like Scamp is just like the way more powerful card in general. But Magris is kind of worth trying just as a cheap attacker that's like good on the front and back end of a Cephalia because you can just go super wide after you draw a bunch of cards. You can help draw more cards with Cephalia because it's just an extra aggro creature and just puts you ahead on a shield race. And then you can't ever really underestimate like how, or you can't, or you shouldn't underestimate like how important it is or really nice it is to have just like a one mana bait creature as well. But
Oh yeah. I
yeah.
mean, like literally every one drop in the game has seen a decent amount of play at one point or another, you know?
Yeah, I think so.
So,
Going back to like that was like what people figured out all the way back in Evil Fury metagame was just like jam garbage one drops and just play your evolutions super efficiently, and then
mhm.
because like Gigabolver, like back in the Blurple days, like Gigabolver came about as, I mean, it looks like garbage, but just playing your Medusa for 6 mana is like really, really nice. So I guess we can go to the next deck if you
Yep,
want to. We're definitely in rambling territory, but
sounds good to me.
um, so the next deck is Kayrik's Blurple deck, Water Dark. Um, Yeah, kind of an interesting list. I think if I recall correctly, this might be like the card for card list that was profiled on like the Rangers Dojo YouTube channel. I don't know if I'm right about that, but
Might have missed that one.
it looks very familiar to me though. So I feel like he got it from there. But if he didn't, apologies. Um, yeah, this
Well,
is
it's a very solid list.
yeah, I agree.
Not a whole lot I would change. The ghosts are a little weird, but like, I mean,
Yeah,
90% of the cards are something I would at the very least strongly consider.
yeah, I actually kind of like Shapeshifter for certain matchups. Like definitely helps in the Dragon matchup, which is going to be relevant in this event. This is your round one matchup, right? So this is the deck you're going to be playing against. Um,
Yes, we haven't played our game yet. We're planning on doing that tomorrow afternoon.
yep.
Um,
And yeah, I mean, not seeing Medusa, I guess like there's just not really a Chimera package, but it makes me wonder like ultimately like is this a? It's basically just like Alex Blue where it's just mono water, but it's being supported by like a small darkness package, which I'm not really sure is like
yeah,
the right way to go because you're not getting. I mean, the shield triggers are nice, right? Terrapate, Bone Blades, but I don't know how much you're getting out of darkness for this kind of approach. But all the water
yeah,
stuff,
it's
yeah,
yeah, the water package is cool. And Screeching is cool. I think Shapeshifter as like an extra copy of Neuron is a neat idea,
hmm,
but like I don't know, it feels like you're probably getting a little more by going with like a light package as supporting this instead, or
yeah,
uh maybe even one of the other colors too, realistically. I'd have to think about it a little more, but
yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
possible like having screeching and bone blades. Like this deck would just destroy like a rush deck, for example, with all the like the darkness cards do a
Oh
great
yeah,
job of that.
absolutely.
But I'm not sure exactly like against a deck like Dark Signers. I'm not sure as much. Like screeching is probably going to be very good there because he's got so many cheap cards, but I'm not sure exactly how it's going to line up. And against dragons, um, the amount of the yeah, all like the really defensive shield blasts are like both good and bad against dragons. But
Yeah.
it'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
that kind of matchup you really would rather have like a big refill mechanic, a Cephalia or a Finbar or something to
Yeah.
like keep pushing after you've taken off half their shields to get that last push in to win the game
Mhm.
before they start developing their big threats and kill you.
Yeah, but I do like I think the core, like the Cyberlord stuff, dendrites and neurons, like that's definitely a recipe to compete with dragons in the one matchup that he has with you. But
Hmm.
overall, I do think that you're probably favored to take that match. But we'll see how that plays out. Um, I don't know. Did you have
And we'll
anything?
report back in Sunday after I go 0-2. You know, it'll be great.
Yeah, yeah, fair, fair. He could give you the God Hands, or you get the complete. I mean, dragons can definitely brick really exceptionally
Oh
hard.
yeah.
I
Well,
guess we can move on to the next
sometimes you
one.
can't make a play till turn 6. It happens.
Oh yeah, the next list is really sweet too. Louis' dragon deck. So he's the second dragon deck in the tournament, and he went a much different direction than you did, which
Hmm.
is yeah, he went with like the kind of classic 4 civ 9 bird version, which is just definitely has the potential to be extremely explosive. And he's got a fair amount more early game plays than a deck like yours as well, with the logo scans too, to just up the consistency of seeing certain cards. But he is also a 43 card build, but very tough to fit 4 civs into 40 cards. But
Absolutely.
just seeing all the one of dragons is really cool. I don't know if it's really optimal, but seeing like 1 1 1 1 is definitely spicy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it makes it a lot harder to predict what is going to happen, I suppose, once he gets up to turn 8 or 9 or whatever.
Hmm.
Because you don't at least with my list, well, it's going to be Infernus or Andromeda. You kind of have a pretty good idea. This has got some other options, which definitely could end the game in different and interesting ways. So,
Yeah,
yeah, not looking forward to playing this. Not going to lie, I can definitely see scenarios where it goes very badly for me.
yeah. If you're in the dragon mirror, it's definitely. I'm just like so rusty when it comes to dragon mirrors, but it definitely seems like having all the birds. I think logos is nice as well, just digging to the relevant stuff. Having access to bone blades and terror pit also pretty relevant, because if the game like stalls out, just having actual hard answers to some of like the stuff like Infernus, because I think that could be a problem for your.
Absolutely.
It could be a problem for your build because you have all the Finbars, Kios, um, Arbiters, which don't really work under Infernus, and that's a lot of your interactions. So you're basically just on piercings, which could be problematic, I think. But at the
If he
same,
gets the drop the Infernus on me early, I'm in trouble.
yeah, which can definitely happen because in the games that kind of stall out, neither player really wants to be attacking in certain positions when it drags out. And but I think the big difference though is you also have 3 Andromeda, which is definitely not irrelevant because it just makes it so much harder for him to like kill you when you have so many shield blasts in your deck. I don't know, kind of interesting matchup. Well, but I guess we'll have to see where it goes to if that even happens. But
Yeah. Well, I mentioned the idea to you. I do think, depending, regardless of how the event goes, we should have a round 4 where we have like all the honor matchups where, the dragons play dragons, the Kalima plays the Kalima, the light water play the light water, and just, gotta determine who really is the top dragon player,
yeah,
and
true.
so
We
everyone will
Yeah, we had a lot of people show up with like the same similar vein of deck, but just different approaches. Definitely. So it's kind of cool to
oh
see
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
But yeah, I think this
Yeah,
list.
that is a good point. They're they're the same archetype. They're like completely different ends of the spectrum, which is cool.
Yeah, Darksigner's on Lightwater aggro with primes. We'll see my deck soon, but mine is Lightwater with Dendrites. Then Krik's also on a Dendrite Neuron deck, and then a couple Dragon decks, and then 2 kind of dark focused mid-rangey Kalima lists, which is nice to see as well. But yeah, I don't know if you want to mention anything else, but yeah, definitely just a really sweet, pretty clean list, I think, for the most part. Just it's got a decent amount of shield blast, a decent amount of early game, I think. Just a pretty nice list in general. But
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that again, as a participant, I'm concerned about. It does look like a cool list. Probably wouldn't. I would be running more copies of some of the Andromedas and stuff, but I'd be looking at like a 45, 48 card list. So I don't know, maybe trimming
yeah,
it down the way you did will end up benefiting it. We'll
yeah,
see.
I could see that for sure. It's just you kind of. I mean, yeah, I would love to see more Andromedas, but at the same time, like it makes sense why you don't play them because you're sort of, in order to balance the civ count, you kind of have to play like a Shade Blaze or a Volaron or some of those like dual civ dragons or off color dragons. You kind of have to play them to support the civ counts, I guess, which definitely makes sense because yeah, even in Lightwater Fire Dragons, like the biggest knock against Andromeda is that it's just like another light card, I guess. But
True. The thought did occur to me at a couple points in my process of like maybe I should only run 2 of these,
yeah, I've definitely considered it as well. It could be enough to just have like a 2-2 split of Andromeda and Awakened. Like that could be reasonable, and then just make space for a little some more early game stuff. But we
Yeah,
could
for
move
sure,
on.
for sure.
Could move on to my deck next, which is, to be honest, I don't know if I feel too confident in this choice, but it is just basically a water light um, aggro deck, just mono water focused with a light splash for a bunch of shield triggers, Keeper of Laws, and Cetus. Um, yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I don't love my chances at taking this event down with this deck, but I think it's somewhat fine. You know, I I spent a lot of my testing on like just exploring different like water nature aggro builds. I know we played a lot of those matchups, um, but I just like didn't really feel too confident going with a deck like that. I just didn't really like them that much. They were fine, I guess, but I just wasn't the biggest fan. And then I guess I kind of had the idea to just like dragons. I think is the best pick, to be honest. I don't know if you would agree with that. I mean, you did play the play the deck, so you probably do. But I think dragons is.
Yeah, I'd have to get a little more comfortable, I think, in the light water X tempo matchup. Uh,
Mhm.
because I think that might be in the ballpark as well, but yeah, it's definitely up there for sure.
Yeah, I think yeah, like dragons. If I was like yeah, if I had to win this tournament to survive or something, like I probably would have registered dragons. But I just after winning the first event with it, I didn't really feel like going back to it. I wanted to try something different, but I didn't really like the water nature decks enough to want to register them, so I just kind of defaulted to the deck that was like next on my list of decks that I wanted to try out, which is probably not the best approach for like picking a deck to win a tournament, but I don't know. I guess I'm setting the excuses for my losing beforehand. So,
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
I breaking down the
makes sense.
choices, I guess. Um, Similar in structure to Darksigner's deck, I think, in a lot of ways. Um, you have like the 8 shield blasts, um, similar counts of like interaction and Keeper of Laws, Sophelia. The early evolutions, I think Cetus is hit or miss. It's another card I want to try out more. Definitely would help in like the light water mirrors. That's one of the places it's really strong. I think it helps against dragons as well, just having a cheap vortex evolution. Just like a giant double breaker. It gets over Lyra, which I think is really relevant. Um, I think against like Louis' dragon list, it'll be way worse because he has like Bone Blades and Terrapit. But against your dragon list, I think it's a lot stronger. But that's kind of the problem with Cetus is that it's super hit or miss. It's also like kind of really bad against Anjac decks, but I wasn't really expecting a lot of those. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll see how it performs. Definitely a solid card. Um, the two Finbar though, I don't know if that's something you could get behind. It's yeah, I don't know. I had
Well,
like yeah, I had like 44 cards I wanted to play. I think it was like, and then I had to cut four, and I had like the extra 4 cards were the third Finbar, the third Stormspark, and two more Tivsters, and I decided to cut Finbar, Stormspark, and two of the Tivsters, but in hindsight, like having just like one extra random 2 drop just doesn't seem like it really adds that much to the deck compared to a third Finbar. You know, kind of hard to defend.
yeah,
Yeah, kind of a hard
yeah. I
decision
don't
to
know.
defend.
I
I
mean, I guess it's just the nature of going with the whole like heavy shield blast package along with Core Isle and
mm-hmm.
Cetus to like, oh hey, I'm gonna make it so my opponent doesn't just get to kill me for free.
Yeah,
But you cut into your consistency of your curve doing that, obviously.
definitely.
Um,
Yeah, I think it might
and
to
at
be.
least you do have the three Cephalias, so I mean, it's you're still gonna draw plenty of cards, I think.
Yeah, like that's kind of part of it was like Finbar was often like I had a bunch of other bounce effects. I think it also would have been totally reasonable to just like cut one of the 4 Rusalkas for the third Finbar. That is definitely because I have so many 4 drops already. Like I could have definitely done that as well. But it was like, my thinking was like I already have so much like interaction with piercings, Rusalkas, the dendrites, and I wanted to have. I think the original list I had like two was the same as this except with third Stormspark and third Finbar the Tivster and one of the Dendrites, but I wanted to have the full 3 Dendrites, but because I think it is like a better card against dragons than Finbar, to be honest.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
And
would agree with that.
because yeah, like Finbar's great, but yeah, like you touched on, yeah, for sure. Like the Sophelia already gives me that kind of replenish effect, and Finbar is somewhat expensive, but it's so powerful when you have it that it's hard to justify not having 3. But
You'll just draw into it when you need it. It'll be fine.
exactly, exactly. I think
I do like the fact that you're playing the tipster too. I think that's a cool card that uh, is maybe not always given the attention it ought to probably have.
yeah, it's definitely fun.
Um,
I was thinking about going like a 2-2 split of Corile and Tivster just to have the extra 2 drop, which helps the consistency of playing Neuron turn 2, and I that could be correct, but I just felt like it was super important to have like the Corile, like the guaranteed effect in the late game. But that could definitely be
sure.
something. That was something I was considering that could be correct in hindsight, or maybe not in hindsight, but could be correct going forward.
I could even sort of see it over like some of the traders or something, you know? It's kind
Yeah,
of the same
that's
effect
true
in some
too.
respects. It's just not guaranteed to see the card. But yeah,
Yeah, I felt like being able to dig for the neurons. I don't know,
sure.
because neurons like super good in a number of the matchups I was expecting, but yeah, I could see that. It's just the clash mechanic. Like if yeah, for sure. If it wasn't clash, it would be auto include. With the clash, it's much harder to suss out, and it's a card that I just like haven't played with enough to really get a feel for it. But I think
Yeah.
one of the other decisions was whether or not I would have should have cut the third Arbiter or the third Storm Spark, and I think I might have made the wrong choice, but I'm not 100% sure because
I think I like third arbiter over third storm spark, but I'm I I'm probably wrong.
yeah, I don't know. Like it made way more sense because I was talking with Darksigner and he was also wanting to cut one of the ninth shield trigger, right? And or shield blast. And the easier decision for that deck is Storm Spark because you have obviously you have Blinder Beetle Prime in the deck. But like Storm Spark's just so nice to set late with Corile and Cetus, and like it's just so important to have access to because you want to have that combo in the mid to late game, and just having 2 might not be enough. Like Arbiter is a way better shield trigger in the early game, of course, right? Like it's just blows out boards against aggro opponents, right? But and it's nice to have because it gives you your when you have 2, if you just have 2 arbiters, maybe it's more likely like your opponent can just kind of confidently force out some of the Coral sets earlier than you'd want them to. So having something to punish that kind of play more often, I don't know. Might be the wrong call for this deck, but I don't know.
And yeah, and you are using it as an Evo bait, even if it's not as central to your game plan because you are running the Cetus. So
Yeah, it definitely
um,
helps like in some of the yeah, it's definitely relevant, but I could see that being the incorrect choice for this build, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, yeah. I think maybe the 4 Rusalkas, yeah, not necessary. Maybe third Keeper of Laws was something I had before as well that could be good, but we'll see how it plays. We'll see. Um, I guess what are there? 2 more
sure.
decks. We have next up. We have a a bit more of a spicy
Yeah.
list. We have I think this is right Jinku's. I don't know if you want. I wouldn't personally. We've talked about my thoughts on Kalima. I wouldn't really call this a Kalima list even. I don't know if you want to hash that out here, or it's probably too critical. We could save that for maybe another discussion down the road. But
Yeah. It still has some interesting things going on with it.
no,
For
definitely,
sure.
yeah,
Uh, there's the classic Chimera package,
mm,
just obviously pretty time tested and all that.
yeah, just
Uh,
strong.
he got the does have the Kalima Agaric Serpens high end stuff going on. Um, I go the Squalache Scourge is actually pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, definitely
Uh,
strong.
I play tested against not this build, but another of his Kalima builds, and in that one he had two uh uh and I the one game he killed me with the one time, and then the second game I managed to play around and survive the first one, and then he dropped the second one. I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, the card is definitely Squillis is
Uh
definitely good, and yeah,
yeah.
but I don't know.
Um
That's where I think oh man, we don't have to get too into it, but I think if you just drop the Kalima, maybe branch out a little more, you could just build a pretty focused, just light water dark mid-rangey creature deck that could just have like a couple Agrics, a couple Serpents, maybe a couple Squillis at the top end. I don't think you really like the Kalimas. I get it. It's for anyone who doesn't know, the pilot is Mark Wooden, who is like the Kalima. I don't know if you want to call him the Kalima god, but he's definitely the Kalima guy. And yeah, I don't know. It feels like he's just kind of playing the Kalimas for the sake of playing Kalimas more than anything else. But the rest of the deck, like the strong parts of the deck, are just like it's just a pretty strong, just mid-range creature-based deck, which gives it a very good chance against a lot of like the tempo decks that people brought, right? Like Underworld Stalker,
sure, sure.
Targusher, the whole Chimera package definitely just gum up the board pretty well, which is nice to see. The water
Yeah,
package,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say it seems a little like it's what is it, 8 cards? Is that right? Yeah, 8 card water package. Maybe a little bit on the suspect side. They're all late game cards, and most of them are shield triggers.
Yeah, there's not that many there's not many light cards either. It's pretty light on that too. Um,
Yeah,
I guess that's intentional to maximize Kalima odds and all that, and to make Chimera alive, Scavenging Chimera alive more often. But
yeah,
yeah, uh, and if it's you're playing a little more on the slower side in general, you can get around the dual civ penalty thing a little bit more too.
yeah. I think the way the metagame shaped out, the one of Reverberate could be pretty. Actually, no, it's gonna be pretty good against dragons. Well, he doesn't like the problem with this list is he doesn't even have like, a lot of the good stuff. I worry about the dragon matchup basically, because he's missing a lot of like the key cards at for these like mid-range decks to fight dragons, which are like Mesmerize and Bone Blades, and he doesn't have either. So
Yeah,
I mean, Mesmerize being the big one, like just seeing that on to break up Dragon's plays, because otherwise, like he just can't, he's just can't really commit a creature to the battle zone. Um, and he doesn't have any answers to birds. So if his opponent just has a bird into Herald draw, like there's not much at all he could do. And if it's the bird is Lux, then yeah, it's just kind of rough for him.
yeah,
I could definitely see because he needs like very specific draws with like Hydra Medusa to like properly combat the dragon's early game. Or the Vortex evolutions are pretty strong against dragons too, like Magelcax and Alphanis. The problem
yeah,
is like getting them into play through a Herald of Infernus when you have no real great avenue to counteract the Herald. So I could definitely see some issues
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
But still, the bottom line though is like it's just a solid creature based mid range deck, which I think is pretty strong, and he has I don't know how many blasts exactly, but quite a few, right? 5, 10, 16, which is pretty significant. So I think a solid list, but definitely some interesting choices. I think if I were to build it, I would probably trim a lot of the stuff, but can't really
yeah.
question too much of
And he's running the spinning terror without your Captain Snowbeard. I mean, what is he
yeah.
thinking?
I think that card was definitely from playing against a lot of Cephalia decks. I don't know if you played because I think we both had some testing sessions with Raijinku, and I know I played a lot of Cephalia against him, so I think that might have put the fear.
Oh, I can see that. Oh yeah, that would be yeah, that would make you think that was a good card for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's not terrible, but it is pretty. It's definitely there for a purpose, and I can see the purpose, but it is a little bit of a questionable choice. But again, lots of good stuff. I would just
Yeah, it's a,
classify
it's a
this.
it's a cool list.
It's pretty balanced in a lot of aspects. So
Yeah.
definitely don't. I could definitely see it doing well. But again, like his round one is versus Lu, who is on the 4 color dragons, and I could see that being a bit of a troublesome matchup depending on how the draws break. Louis also has logo skin, which I think is really
Oh,
nice too. Yeah, I think I might pick
yeah.
Louis to win that one, but it would be. I mean, again, he's got 16 triggers and the vortex. Like he's got the tools. It's just a matter of like kind of drawing the cards that he needs in the way he needs against, and
Yeah.
hoping that kind of lines up well against his
Yeah.
dragon draw.
Being able to stick one of those, yeah, being able to stick an Evo in the mid game is going to be huge.
Yeah,
If he does it, he probably is able to stabilize, and if not, then probably
maybe. I
not going to
mean,
go well.
even then, Louis has the Terra Pits, which you don't have. Because otherwise, if without Terra Pit, I
Oh,
mean,
that's true.
like Lyra does a good job against these vortexes as well. It's just a matter of like, so Louis could even just play around them pretty well too, and then really diminish the impact. So I don't know. I have some doubts about the first round, but again, like these Kalima decks in general, I felt like had a better shot than a lot of other decks against dragons, but not sure if this build has all the tools it would need. But it's kaijudo, so we'll see. Um, but yeah, lots of good. I mean, I just in general, Serpent's Agrix is really sweet too. Can't Agrix is just an awesome card. So, but I guess
Oh yeah, definitely.
we could move on to the last deck, which is White Rangers Fire Dark Nature Light. Um, I guess Control. I don't know. Yeah, I guess Control. Just this is my round one matchup.
Oh, mid range something in there.
Yeah, just
It's
a
an
lot.
interesting deck.
It is. It's got a lot of good stuff, right? Like
Unique.
tons of blockers,
Oh
tons
yeah.
of well, maybe not even tons of shield triggers, but a fair amount of shield triggers. It's got absolute incinerations, like a lot of cards I would be scared of. Some cards not so much. Starlight Strategist is interesting. Like it definitely makes sense because it works with a lot of the cards going on, right? Like it's got like a I guess it's got a Skyforce champion sub theme, but kind of hard for me
Yeah.
to want to
Yeah,
play.
there's most all of his bigger guys are champions as it turns out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would be a little hesitant to register Strategist over Lyra, like even with the synergy, but makes Voldron a better card too. Like Johnny Darkseid, I think is really strong, so that's a nice card to have. Just gets him up to Voldron and does some scary stuff. Like I think like this deck would probably be maybe better served just having Andromedas, like most decks would be, but still kind of scary. Like ramp, blockers, shield triggers, and then big stuff is sort of just a general recipe for success in this game. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to see scenarios where it can do well. I mean, there's some weird choices here. Toranok is just not as good as Bottle was. It just isn't.
Yeah, I
It's a neat
definitely agree
idea,
about.
but
Yeah, like against
um,
how what are there? There's three. I mean, me, Carrick, and Darksigner are all on like bounce heavy decks, and that just kind of just makes
mhm.
Toranok just almost a liability. Like I feel like if you cast Toranok, you're either like way far ahead, in which case it's kind of just like I'd rather just have like another giant. Like I'd rather just have 3 Andromedas in the deck instead of Toranok straight up, right?
Yeah,
Like that way it's actually something that affects the board right away that you can play towards. Otherwise, like Toranok, you're either already stabilized and it's kind of just whatever, or you're just tapping out for it, hoping that you can like high roll the next turn to get yourself out of a tough spot, and then most of the time you just don't get to untap with it.
yeah.
But yeah,
But
interesting.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I he's got a lot of solid mid game stabilization tools. The
Hmm.
Major Owls, the Shield Blasts, the blockers. I
Yeah.
mean, that's gonna be annoying.
Yeah, I agree. Major Owl is
Absolute
pretty strong.
Incineration. Yeah, Absolute Incineration is devastating against many aggro boards.
For
Um,
sure. I could definitely see that being like just Johnny Darkseid. I think a lot of the success of this deck would probably come down to seeing Darkseid in a spot where you can cast it. Like I think that's one of the core pieces of this deck. Um, yeah. Only 2 Terrapits, maybe. I mean, I guess it's fine. I don't know if I love the muck tax either. Like it's just a early game play, but I don't know. It just doesn't make too much sense to me. But it's fine. One mesmerize. I feel like you'd want to play three of this. Like I don't know. I don't. Oh man, two darkness decks in a row and there's only one mesmerize kind of shocks me. But maybe other people think of the game in a different, superior way to than I do.
Just happy that people won't be taking my heralds out of my hand. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, it's pretty good for you. I would. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah, yeah. It's, I mean, mesmerize was always like the scariest card for me when I was playing dragons. Like it's yeah, just because dragons is such like a mana hungry deck because you want to hit your land drops because you have so much expensive things. But if you're like pretty reliant on your birds to generate you extra resources, but like your opponent can just kill your birds to take away that extra resource, and then they just pick apart your hand, mesmerizes and spire puppets and stuff like that, and then you're kind of just top decking in a lot of spots, and a lot of your cards are really expensive. So it just gives these other decks the chance to take over, because then they can land like a dark seed, which just plus twos or whatever. I don't know exactly, but it gives them the advantage in resources, and then they just kind of stabilize against dragons. But without like mesmerize is such like a pivotal piece of like getting that game plan in motion in the first place. But yeah, it'd be cool to hear Raijinku's thought process behind not playing mesmerize, but we'll see how it plays out. Um, do you have any predictions on how?
When one of these guys goes and takes the whole thing and makes us eat our words, then we'll have to give him an interview and say, hey, so yeah, we thought mesmerize was good. I guess we're wrong. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. Like I will always hold the opinion that these Kalima decks would be better served without Kalima, but like you can still win with them. I just think like it's a bit of a handicap, but that's a discussion for another day. But a lot of these decks, like this deck, is just full of good cards. Like it may not be like optimally constructed in my opinion, but like it's still just like every card on here is like somewhat strong. So I would not be surprised if this deck goes on a run. I do think it's also not set up well for dragons. Like I think that would probably be right. Like I think this deck can steal games against me or Kairik or Darksign or any of these like aggro players, but it's much harder to steal games against dragons with a deck like this. But do you have any predictions on like the tournament as a whole? Who do you think's gonna take the W aside from yourself?
Oh, I wouldn't predict myself. Although I wouldn't mind it. I mean, maybe I'll get to give away less packs that way. Uh, but um, I think if I could definitely see either of the light water tempo decks taking it. And I would say it's between that and the one of the two dragon decks. It might just depend on which one of those lists gets the better luck going into the thing. So I'm gonna hedge my bets and say pick half the field and not the other half.
I would be inclined to say the same thing. I think Darksigner's list I have a little bit more faith in than my own as far as light water decks go, to be honest. Like Blinder Beetle Prime is just incredible card, Sasha's an incredible card.
Good card.
Being more light focused is probably better than not being more light focused, to be honest, given the status of light in Kaijudo, but I could see that deck, and then I think both yours and Louis' dragon decks are both I think maybe favored. I don't like Louis is. I have much less experience with that approach. It's been a long time since I've played like 8 bird dragons or 9 bird dragons or birds of war, if anyone remembers that name from back in the day. Like I want to say I think you might be the favorite for this event with your list, just because it's the same list I used to win the first one. But depending on how Louis' deck performs, I could see him going on a run with his 4 color dragon deck. So
Yeah,
if I have
probably
to,
the matchup. Yeah, that's probably one matchup I'm most worried about. Like I kind of know how the matchup was with the light water is going to go. I'm not
Hmm.
going to like it, but if I draw well, get a couple blasts, I'll be fine, But
Yeah.
the other one is definitely scary.
Yeah, that's like an unknown factor. Because I haven't gone about testing versus that deck yet. I probably will at some point. I'm sure you will as well. But we haven't done
Mhm.
it yet, so it's hard to say. But if I had to pick someone, I'd probably pick you. But um, but yeah, I could easily see Louis or Darksigner taking it as well. But maybe we're just not giving enough credit to these control decks either. Like they could easily overperform my expectations. But
Yeah,
but yeah, like I mentioned, I
yeah,
think it's easier to see them overperforming against the aggro decks than the dragon decks, to be honest. That's my kind of concern with them,
yeah.
because I just don't really see the tools for them to consistently beat. But again, they can, like, dragons can just draw garbage, and these decks can steal a win here and there against it. So
Sure, sure.
I don't know. I guess we could.
Uh,
Oh, do you have a final thought?
oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I may be using a vest very similar to yours, but I think the field is a bit stronger this time. So that may not be as much of an advantage as it was last time. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is good. It's good to get some more good games in for sure.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. But I guess that pretty much wraps it up. I don't know how long this video was. It felt kind of a little bit lengthy, but should be enjoyable for anyone watching and wanting to get a feel for what these tournaments are going to be like. But thanks for joining me, Andross. Fun to have you on and have a different voice on the channel for once. But best of luck in the event for yourself. Hopefully we don't meet until the finals if we meet at all. But we'll see how it goes.